Welcome to the first lesson of the first unit of Minute Micro Macro. Today we're looking at what do I demand? To get you warmed up, think to yourself, what is the relationship between the two variables in each pair? As you age, the amount of hair you usually have left does decrease. As you increase the number of workers on a set project, you'd expect the time taken to decrease. As you exercise, ceteris paribus, you'd expect to see a decrease in body fat. Ceteris paribus means all other things held equal. So if you didn't change anything else but increased your exercise, you would see a decrease in body fat. And speed and time taken, if you increase the speed, the time taken to complete a journey would decrease. We've seen this in maths with a relationship between x and y. It is inverse when as x increases, y decreases. Our objectives for this lesson today are to be able to read movements along a demand curve and to know the factors that shift the demand curve. Imagine a pair of shoes you really want. How much are you willing and able to pay for your dream shoes? In a classroom, I'd ask everyone to raise their hands if they are willing to pay £25 for their dream pair of shoes. Would they be willing to pay £50 for their dream pair of shoes? Now you must remember that you only demand them if you are both willing and able to buy them. So you have to have that money available to buy those shoes. How about £100, £200, £400, £800? What about £1,600? What you'd expect to see in a classroom is that as the price rises, the demand falls.
These are the results I'd expect to see in the classroom. So at £25, maybe 17 of my students would have their hands up. And as the price increases, we would see more students drop their hands. And so it becomes intuitive that as price increases, fewer people demand the good.
Here is a graph showing the relationship of demand between price and quantity. So if the price of the good is £100, what will be the quantity demanded? Price is on the y-axis, and so we can go to £100, read across until we hit the demand curve, read down to the x-axis, which shows quantity, and we can see that at £100, 40 units will be demanded. Now it's your turn to have a quick go at some typical questions. Pause the video and have a go. Okay, let's whiz through the answers. If the price of a good is £50, what will be the quantity demanded? So I go to £50 on my y-axis, I read across until I hit the demand curve, I read down, and I can see that the answer is 120. One of the tricks that they will try and catch you out with is that the quantity is in millions. So our answer is 120 million units. Next question, if the price of the good is £120, what will be the quantity demanded? So this time the price is 120, read across and down, and I can see that my answer is 10 million units. Now if the price have been, if the quantity demanded was 90 million, so 90 million is here. We're going to read up this time to hit my demand curve and across the y-axis to read off the price. The price must have been £70. Now a slightly longer question. If the price falls from £120 to £50, what is the increase in quantity demand as a percentage? Well, we've seen the price fall from £120 to £50, and we can see that the quantity demanded increased from 10 up to 120 million units. And so now we just have to turn that into a percentage change. Percentage change in quantity demanded is equal to the change over the original times by 100. Well, the change was an increase in 110 million units, so 110, and it was a positive change because it was an increase. The original quantity demanded was 10 million units, and then times that by 100, and we'll find that the answer is 1,100%. This graph shows the demand for trainers. What do you think will happen if the population increases? Pause this video and have a think. Okay, I'm going to answer this question and also introduce you to chains of reasoning. So the question asks me, what will be the effect of an increase in population? So if there were an increase in population, we can imagine there's going to be more people. And if there are more people in a country, there's going to be a higher number of consumers. If we've got more consumers, we'd expect the demand for my trainers to increase. Now, how are we going to move this demand curve to represent an increase? Well, we've been reading the quantity demanded off of the x-axis, so an increase is to the right and a decrease is to the left, and so we're going to shift demand to the right. We're going to show that by drawing another demand curve to the right. I'm going to label that D2 and draw a small arrow to make it clear to the examiner. What are the factors that could cause a shift in demand? P stands for population change. If there's an increase in population, there would be an increase in consumers and we'd see an increase in demand. If there's a change in advertisement, whereby we increase the quantity or quality of adverts, we would see an increase in demand. S stands for substitutes. So, for example, if the price of a substitute good increased, we would see those consumers switch to an alternative good, and so I would see an increase in demand for the good that I was focusing on. Income. If we saw an increase in the real income, we would expect to see an increase in demand of normal goods. F stands for fashion or trends. If the good we are selling is particularly fashionable or a trend at the time, we would see an increase in demand. Now, it's important to notice that when we see increases in demand, we would represent that on a graph with a shift to the right. The next I stands for interest rates. Now, if we saw an increase in interest rates, that would mean an increase in the cost of borrowing and an increase in the reward for saving. And so we would see a demand fall for our goods. C stands for complements. If the price of a complement were to increase, we would see the fall in demand for our good. And remember that a fall in demand is represented by a shift to the left. 6 quick questions where you're going to model the changes to the housing market, and all answers are going to need to be given in context. For each question, I need you to draw price and quantity axis, and you must use a ruler and label your axes. You're going to draw a starting demand curve, again using a ruler and labeling demand. You're then going to show the effect of a change. You should give me a chain of reasoning, and if you want an extension, you should write your answer out in full sentences. To show an increase in immigration, that means that there's been an increase in population. There are more people who are willing and able to buy houses, and so demand curve is going to increase by shifting to the right. This is what you should have drawn down. Here I wanted you to model the rise in the price in the housing market. Hopefully you didn't fall into the trap. This question is a change in price, and as we know, a change in price is not one of the factors that will shift the demand curve. When price changes, we read along the demand curve. So if we started at P1 and quantity demanded 1, and we saw an increase in price, we'd move up along the demand curve. We'd see price increasing on the y-axis from P1 to P2, and we'd see a fall in quantity demanded from QD1 to QD2. If we saw a fall in real incomes, then individuals would have less money to spend on housing, and so we would expect to see a fall in demand, and it would shift to the left. If there was a fall in price of houses, then we would expect to see P1 go down. There would be a movement along the demand curve. We go from P1 to P2, and we'd see an increase in quantity demanded from QD1 to QD2. This question required an appreciation of the context. An increase in the price of rental accommodation. Well, what is the relationship between rental accommodation and the housing market to buy a house? Well, they are substitutes. So an increase in the price of rental accommodation means an increase in the price of a substitute. Those who are able to will switch consumption from renting to buying, and therefore see an increase in demand for purchasing a house, and we'll see demand shift to the right. A rise in mortgage interest rates is an increase in the cost of borrowing. That means that people will have to repay more each month in order to get their mortgage, or if they're on a variable rate, people who already have mortgages will have to pay back more each month. These mean that we'll have a decrease in demand for purchasing houses, and so the demand curve will shift to the left. Thank you for listening. Make sure you file away your notes so you can revise from them, and we'll see you next time.